everybody. Hi, it's Becky from PowerToolsWithThread.com. That's my blog. All right, we are getting ready to start the Santa Table Runner Embroider-along. This design is from Sweet Pea Embroidery, and they are down in Australia, and I will link to the design below. I have chosen to do my runner in the traditional colors with the dark backgrounds and red shirts. I was thinking it might be kind of fun to do one with tropical backgrounds and maybe some Hawaiian shirts for the tropical Santas. Those are always fun to do too. So there's a lot of choices that you can do for your design. My jury is still out right now on my borders. I am not entirely sure. I had thought I was going to do a black and red plaid border, but I'm not liking it now that I've got my my fabrics all laid out. In a second, I'm going to get on the computer and go over the directions with you. I'll just give you an idea of step by step exactly what we're going to be doing so there's no surprises as we go. This is going to be a very quick sew, and we'll probably do one a day through the rest of the week and into the weekend and wrap it up probably on Saturday. Let me show you the fabrics I've chosen. I'm using some batiks and then regular quilting fabrics as well. So this is my black for the belt on Santa number 1. This was my potential for a border. I'm not sure if I want to use that or not. Just like the pattern showed in the sample that the designer put, I went dark, light, dark, light, dark. And then subsequently used red with small print on the darker fabrics. And I may use this Yoder fabric for a border. You're going to want to hoop Cutaway stabilizer. I am making the design that will fit into the 6x10 hoop, and I don't have a 6x10 hoop, so I'm using my 9x14 hoop. That's one of my favorite hoops to use. Even though the 8x12 will fit in here, I don't want to make the 8x12 because I don't want to make my table runner that large. So I'm going to be doing the 6x10 Santa table runner, and that's why I have already cut all of my fabrics to the design size that was required by the pattern. So I think we're ready to get started. Let's start by taking a look at the Santa Table Runner design and the instructions, the PDF file that are the instructions. You can see that there are 5 different Santas here that make up the table runner. And let's start by looking at the different sizes. Now, if you're new to embroidery, this is something that you need to take into consideration. The size of 5x7 or 6x10 or 8x12 is not the size of the Santa. It is the size of the hoop that can be used to make the embroidery design. Of course, the larger the hoop, the larger the Santa will be as you make your table runner. So these are hoop sizes. If you have a machine whose largest hoop is a 4x4, you will not be able to make this, even if you were to resize it. It may not digitize properly, and it's not recommended for that. Generally, as a rule, machines only can see as large as their hoop size. If you have a hoop size that is larger than the 8x12, you will be able to make any of these sizes at all. If your largest hoop size is 5x7, you'll be limited to the 5x7 hoop. You won't be able to make the 6x10 or the 8x12. Let's take a look at the design itself. We actually have 5 different embroidery designs. This Santa over here on the left has a belt, and this Santa has a ho, ho, ho. This Santa has a plum pudding. This Santa has presents, and this Santa has Merry Christmas. So it's 5 different design files that we're going to make, and they are identical in their construction with the exception of the different embellishments on each one. So while there's 29 pages of instructions here, all of the instructions to make each of them are really the same The only difference is there will be a separate page for each Santa to tell you how to do the embellishments, and it's very, very easy to do that. If you want to use the same color that the designer has, they have a dark, a light background, a dark background, a light background, and a darker background. And then if you notice, on the darker backgrounds, they have red shirts that have a little bit of white in them. On all of them, the darker backgrounds have red shirts with a little bit of white. Small scale print is what they used. And then on the light backgrounds, they used more of a darker, something that reads as a solid on this. So just kind of keep that into consideration. They used all different reds on the hats. There's nothing wrong with mixing and matching. You could do the hats the same as the shirt. You could do the hats all the same, whatever you want to do. And you will need additional fabric pieces from what's mentioned in the cutting for the belt and the hats, the plum pudding, and the presents. When we go down to the next page, that's where we get the instructions, okay? So, like we talked about, on your largest hoop size, 5x7, 6x10, or 8x12, here are your fabric requirements for the 5x7. There's your Santa blocks. It says rest of table runner, which means the borders and the backing, and then your batting cutouts for your side panel and your borders. And then it gives you a finished dimension. So when you're thinking about how big of a table runner to make, your natural inclination, if you can make the largest size, is to say, let's make the biggest one. Well, the biggest one finishes out at a 45-inch table runner. That's pretty long. That's almost 4 feet. So do you want a 45-inch table runner? Maybe you don't. Maybe you want a 3-foot table runner. Well, maybe this one is the one that is better suited to make your 3-foot table runner that's only 14.5 inches tall when finished. And then the smallest one, 30 inches long and 12 inches tall. So just kind of take that into consideration also when you're making your table runner. What do you want the final size to be? So as we get up in here, also take a look. This is going to be something that is very close to quilt as you go, kind of. So we are going to embroider 5 different Santas in 5 different hoopings, and then they will all be attached together. They will all have batting, and they all have individual stippling stitches on the backgrounds. And then we will be stitching on borders. When we get to the end, we'll be stitching on borders, and those will be also, they will have their own batting. So it's kind of a cross between an embroidery project and a quilt as you go project. I want to go quickly through the instructions with you to give you an idea of what needs to be done. You're going to put your batting down, and the method I choose is to put the batting down and then to stitch it and then trim it. This is the method I will be using. That's very simple to do. And then it's going to give you placement lines. And when it stitches a placement line, you just need to put your fabric over the placement line about 1/2 inch. This is your background fabric right here. And then it's going to stitch it down. You're going to trim the bottom half, just that little bit, that little 1/2 inch that was over, you're going to trim that, and that's what it'll look like. And then it's going to do the embroidery quilting. It's going to do all that background stippling. That's the next step. So you'll end up with something that looks like this, with your background stippling done, and the bottom half is ready for the shirt. The next step, we'll stitch down the shirt fabric, and you will remove the hoop and trim the shirt fabric all the way around without cutting the stitching. You're going to stitch the placement line for the hat. We'll lay a piece of fabric down over the placement line, making sure it's fully covered, and then we'll stitch the fabric down for the hat, and then you'll pull out the hoop and you will trim all the extra fabric. This is where you would really want to use those curved scissors to trim away your fabric while it is in the hoop. You will never be removing your project from the hoop. Then there's going to be a satin stitch that goes around the hat, and it's going to create a placement line for the face, and then you will lay your fabric down over the placement line, and then it will stitch the tack down line for the face. And again, you will trim your fabric close to the stitching, but don't trim the stitching away. It will make the placement line for the fur trim for the hat and the pom-pom. And you'll lay your piece of fabric down over that. And see, it is the same thing over and over. It will create a placement line, a tack down line, and then you trim it away, and then it will create a satin stitch and finish it. You will stitch the placement line for the beard. You'll put the beard fabric down. It will stitch that down, and you will trim it away. We'll embroider the cheeks. Those are stitches, not applique fabric. And then we will do the satin stitches all for the beard and around the hat and the pom-pom. And then we'll embroider the nose and the eyes and the mouth. Here on step 20, so step 1 through 19 for all 5 Santas is the same. Then step 20 is where you get to the different embellishments for each one. Here on the first Santa, we're going to do the belt. And again, it does placement line. You put your fabric over it. It does the tack down stitch. You trim it away. It will embroider the satin stitch around the belt, and then it will do the buckle. And then you can remove your work from the hoop and trim away the backing. You want to trim it to about 1/2 inch, not a quarter, but 1/2 inch, and your Santa panel is finished. So we're going to do that for all 5. And then the additional pages, Santa 2 or 5, instructions are the same. So you'll be a pro at this by the time we get to this part when we go to our next Santa. In addition to the design file and the instructions, you're going to need a hoop that you have cutaway stabilizer in. You're going to need a piece of batting that is cut to the size of the hoop. I have 5 pieces here for all 5 of my Santas. You're going to need fabric for your face. You're going to need fabric for the pom-pom, the hat band, and the beard, and I'm using the same fabric for all of that. It's white. It's a white on white. Looks like little snowflakes. For this first Santa, I need black for the belt. Here are my background and my shirt fabrics. You're going to need a pair of curved embroidery scissors so that you can cut the fabric in the hoop, and you're going to need a firm surface to cut all of your fabric on once you remove the hoop from the machine. All right, so we are about to get started. I'm going to do something a little bit different here than what the instructions call for, and this might be helpful for you as well if you're using a different size hoop than what the instructions want you to use. So because I'm making the size that would normally fit in the 6x10, I need to know where exactly to put my batting piece, and I'm not real sure where to do that right now because, I mean, I could kind of eyeball center, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch out the first stitch, which is really supposed to tack the batting down. According to the directions, you lay the batting down and then it will tack it down for you, tack down your batting. I'm going to run that stitch just on the stabilizer first as a placement stitch, and then I'm going to restitch it once I put my batting down and I make sure all of the sides are covered. That's just an easy way to go about doing that. So I'm going to put my hoop in my machine. The very first stitch that's going to be seen is the stippling within the background, which will be a dark blue. So I have a dark blue already threaded. So it really doesn't matter what color of stitching you're going to use to tack down your batting. So just to make life easier, I usually start my first thread run with whichever color is going to be seen first. It just makes life a little bit simpler not to have to change threads all the time for each color change in the pattern. Let me show you what I'm doing. At the luminaire, we're going to go to embroidery, and it wants to know where do I want to get my design from. I want to get it from the pocket, which is memory. I sent the design wirelessly using Embrilliance's utility feature to send over designs wirelessly to the luminaire. So I'm going to hit the wireless button. If you did this and you are using a USB stick, you will hit the USB symbol right there. So I'm going to hit wireless, and it is Santa 1, and there he is. It says it doesn't have enough thread information. That's because of the transfer that I did using Embrilliance. That's okay. I know what threads I'm going to use. Hit OK. I'm going to hit set. I have a thread tree back here that I use, and I will link to it in the description box. And this has all of the threads I'm going to use, plus a few extras that were just left from another project. But they're all lined up and they're ready to go, and I'm ready to start my embroidery. I'm going to thread the needle. I'm using an Oregon 7511 needle, and I have a pre-wound bobbin that I buy a box of 144 from Amazon. It's the size A 156 in the machine, and I'm going to hit embroidery on the screen, and you'll see that the button turned green and we are ready to go. Again, this is supposed to be the tack down stitch for the batting. So if you have the right hoop size for your chosen size of project, go ahead and lay your batting down and then stitch it down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch the first stitch twice and use the first one as a placement line. Now let me show you what I'm going to do to restitch that. Let's get in close. Up here in the menu at the top of the machine, you can tell we are on stitch 2. Well, I want to stitch number 1 again. So to do that, in all Brother and Baby Lock machines and possibly other machines, you will have a needle plus minus button. I'm going to touch that button. And then I've got some up or down arrows here. Let me show you. Okay, I have up and down arrows. So you have -1, +1. These are your individual stitches that you can jump forward, or you can jump backwards, or you can start over the entire design by touching 0. Or you have the thread with an up or down arrow. I want to go up 1. And if you look on the menu now, it shows I'm no longer on the second one. So I'm going to touch OK. And I'm going to restitch that design again. Now I can see my placement line, and I know exactly where I need to put my batting. If your batting has little bumps on it, you want to put those down. And I'm just going to make sure my batting covers. My size batting is 8 by 12. Oh, they made it very generous. So we've got plenty down here. We have plenty up here. And there we go. Now I'm just going to stitch it all down again. You don't need any kind of adhesive or glue or anything. Now you want to remove the hoop from the machine and trim the batting around on all 4 sides. You'll want to have a firm surface where you can do your cutting, and this is where those curved scissors come in very handy. I'll link to these below. These are Gingers. I do not recommend going cheap on these kinds of scissors. There are less expensive ones you can buy, but they hurt your fingers. They allow you to trim away batting and fabric without cutting into your stitching, and you get nice and close. Okay, we're ready for the next stitch. Whenever you put your hoop back in your machine, you want to hold on to this arm so that as you slide in the hoop, the arm doesn't move around on you at all. If it does, if you accidentally have, maybe you push too hard and this moves forward, you will want to go into your menu, that needle plus minus again, and hit the up arrow one time on the thread so it goes back to the start, and then hit the down arrow on that thread so it goes back to where it just finished. And it will be fine if you do that. Now we want to make the placement line for the background fabric. Lay your background fabric down and make sure it completely covers the placement line, and hanging over the top by about 1/2 inch at least. Now we're going to trim away the fabric right here at the bottom. And we are ready to do the all over background stippling. We're going to do the placement line for the shirting, and it wants me to change the thread colors, so I'm going to change to red. When I change my thread colors, I make a single loop, knot, and then pull them through. Thread the needle, and we're ready to go. Put on your shirt fabric face up, and be sure to cover that top stitching line by about 1/2 inch, and also 1/2 inch on either side. Okay, we're going to trim away from the side. You want to trim the shoulders and over, across the top and down. There we go. That's good. The next we're going to do is the placement line for the hat, so I'm going to leave in the red thread. I've got a scrap here. I'm just going to see how much of it I need. About that much. I'll cut it. This is measuring on the fly, you guys. Works pretty good. There we go. I'm going to turn his hat so he's a little sideways there. Looks good. This is the tack down stitch for the hat. Now you want to remove the hoop and trim away the extra fabric from around the hat. Next is the satin stitching around the outside of the hat and the shoulders. I'm going to stop right here. If you have a machine that does not automatically cut the jump threads that went between the shoulder stitches, you're going to want to stop your machine right now and trim that jump thread off. Anytime you have jump threads that go over a distance, you're going to want to cut those out so that they don't possibly show through something else that might be placed on top of them. It's time to put down the placement line for the face. I'm going to do a thread color change. Because we have such a dark background, I'm going to use 2 layers of the face fabric. Just going to fold it over in half and let it stitch both layers at one time. It's a little trick. I'm going to remove the hoop and trim away the face fabric. Now it's going to do the outline for the hat and the pom-pom, so I'm going to thread change to white. And just like on the face, I'm going to use 2 layers of white fabric so that the dark background does not show through. I've got a little bit of a loop right here. Trim that, get rid of it. So let me show you what just happened. Right here, underneath this little end of the hat, I miscalculated on how far down to make my fold. And to fix that, it's very simple. Embroidery, and especially applique, is one of the most forgiving of all crafts, I think. To fix that, I'm just going to leave the original as is, and I'm going to put another piece of fabric on top of it. I'm going to, let me show you how to reset this in the machine with the needle plus minus. I want to go back out just a little bit. Oh, other way. I want to go back to my previous stitch. I'm going to hit needle plus minus. And I'm going to come up here to these arrows. I'm going to back up a stitch. Now, here you can see there is a crosshair, and it's going to stitch that second stitch around the pom-pom. I don't need to do that. So I'm going to go plus 100. And where am I now? I'm down here in the middle of the hat band. That is too far. Let me back up 10, 20, 30. I will continue to hit this until I get, now I'm back at the pom-pom. Can you see that crosshair? That's what I'm looking at. Now I'm going to go plus 1 until I get to the hat. There I am. Now I'm ready to start again. I'm going to press the green button and go. Now I'll just trim all these layers. This is really cute if you wanted to do this in Minky as well. I would recommend you keep a lint roller handy if you're going to be trimming Minky in the hoop. But it is very cute for the fur parts on the hat if you wanted to do that. If you're going to use fur and or Minky, you may want to use a piece of what's called topper, and it's almost like Glad press and seal, but it's not sticky. Same consistency, and that will give you a nice satin stitch around any kind of furry fabrics you might be using. That looks pretty good. Can't tell I messed it up at all. Now I'm going to jump ahead 1 stitch, and it's going to do the outline for the beard. He's going to have snow all over his beard and his hat. Now remove the hoop and trim the excess away from the beard. This is where pre-cut SVG files come in very handy. I would really like to cut these prior to having to put them on this way. This is the old-fashioned way. I mean, it works, but I would much rather have them pre-cut, but they don't come with this particular design. And if SVG files don't come with your design, you can print out the embroidery file, and I would go over the design outline with a Sharpie before scanning it into a scan and cut to create an SVG. But I would definitely do a test to make sure that that SVG is going to fit where you think it's supposed to, because it might not. That's one of the beauty of Kimberbell designs. They normally have SVG files that you can run through a cutting machine before you start. Then you don't have to bother with this. Maybe we can get Sweet Pea to start making SVG files. All right, it's time for his cheeks, so we're going to do a thread color change. Again, if your machine did not cut the jump threads between the two cheeks, you're going to want to do that now. Mine has a little tail from the starter thread that needs to be trimmed. Time for the outline of the hat, the pom-pom, and the beard, so thread color change again back to white. The next one takes 17 minutes, so I'm going to pause the video here and let it do its thing. Time to embroider the nose. I'm stopping the machine because it looks like the tail didn't knot off fully on the back like I would like. So I'm going to take a pair of tweezers and grab a hold of it and then trim it with my snips. That way we don't have any kind of snag at all. Time for a color change to do the eyes and the mouth. Here's the belt tack down stitch. I'm going to remove the hoop and trim away the extra fabric from the belt. And it's time for the satin stitch on the belt. The last stitch is the gold buckle, and I'm going to use a metallic thread to give him a nice shiny gold buckle. So I am going to change out my needle from the 7511 to a 9014, which is recommended for the metallic thread. It's the Schmetz Universal is the one I'm using. We'll give it a shot, see how it does. The thread I'm using is Dimes King Star Metallic. Let me make sure I have enough bobbin. I should be fine. All finished. Okay, we're all finished. I'm just going to pop this out of the hoop. Give it a little shake. And we're going to trim everything to 1/2 inch. Okay, you guys, so we're all done. We've got our first one finished. This was a lot of fun, and I think he turned out super cute. I'm looking forward to making the rest of them. I think I might have to do one of those tropical Santas. He'd probably go pretty good at my house at the coast. All right, looking forward to doing the rest of them with you. We'll talk to you soon. Go sew something. Bye.